Chapter 17, Sane Carbohydrates, Non-starchy Vegetables. Step 1 to going sane. Cover at least half your plate with non-starchy vegetables. As a general rule, non-starchy vegetables are vegetables you could eat raw. For example, corn, potatoes, and many root vegetables cannot be eaten raw. They are starches. Spinach, kale, romaine lettuce, broccoli, mushrooms, carrots, onions, and generally things you find in salads can be eaten raw and are non-starchy vegetables. Even more generally, if it's a plant and you can't eat it raw, for instance, starchy vegetables, grains, and legumes, you are likely to be healthier and slimmer swapping it for a plant you could eat raw, aka non-starchy vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. Both fresh and frozen non-starchy vegetables are excellent choices. Sometimes frozen non-starchy vegetables can be even better options, as their fresh counterparts may not be fresh. Frozen vegetables are often flash frozen in their prime. This is useful because regardless of when you eat them, you will enjoy a nearly optimal amount of nutrients. Fresh vegetables in their prime are wonderful options. Just make sure they are actually in their prime. Don't let them rot in your fridge. Bottom line, fresh and frozen non-starchy vegetables should make up the vast majority of the food you're eating. Deep green vegetables such as spinach, kale, romaine lettuce, greens, broccoli, and so on are the best of the best when it comes to non-starchy vegetables. Try to get the bulk of your non-starchy vegetable intake from deep greens. The deeply colored rule also applies across the rainbow. With a few exceptions, such as cauliflower, the richer the color of the non-starchy vegetable, the better it is for you. For example, light green iceberg lettuce isn't as healthy as a deeper green romaine lettuce, which lacks behind very deep greens, such as spinach or kale. What about cooking? Your top priority is eating at least 10 servings of non-starchy vegetables per day, so please do whatever is necessary within reason to get 10 plus servings of non-starchy vegetables into your body. You'll find more specific tips on how to do this easily and deliciously at sanesolution.com. In an ideal world, most of your non-starchy vegetables would be eaten raw to maximize nutrient and water content. But if you don't like them raw, that's fine. Again, raw is good, but eating more of them is even better. Again, much more information on how to make it easy to be green and to make vegetables so delicious, even kids love them, can be found on sanesolution.com. With the exception of leafy green vegetables, such as spinach, kale, romaine lettuce, etc., a serving is about the size of your fist, or what fits in an 8-ounce measuring cup. A serving of raw leafy greens is 2 or 3 cups. If cooking makes the vegetables shrink, spinach, mushrooms, etc., then a serving of the cooked non-starchy vegetables is about half the size of your fist, or half a cup. Sidebar: servings examples for non-starchy vegetables. Tip: instead of counting calories, focus on counting servings of whole foods. You can do this very easily with your Sane mobile application available at sanesolution.com. Typical servings of non-starchy vegetables: 2 heaping cups of raw leafy green vegetables, 6 asparagus spears, 8 baby carrots, 5 pieces of broccoli, 1 Roma tomato, 4 slices of an onion, 5 cherry tomatoes, 5 sticks of celery, 1 whole carrot, half a cup of cooked spinach. tip. One great way to make non-starchy vegetables easy to eat on the go, or to just boost your vegetable intake in general and conveniently, is to enjoy pure and unprocessed whole food vegetable powders. You can learn much more about whole food vegetable powders in your Sane store at sanesolution.com. Sidebar: Grocery list: common non-starchy vegetables. Note, this is not an exhaustive list. It's a list of the most commonly available non-starchy vegetables. Alfalfa sprouts, artichoke, arugula, asparagus, avocado, bean sprouts, beets, bell peppers, bok choy, broccoli, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, celery, chard, chives, collards, cucumber, dandelion greens, eggplant, endive, garlic, greens, green beans, kale, leeks, lemongrass, mixed greens, mushrooms, mustard greens, onion, parsley, peppers, pumpkin, romaine lettuce, sauerkraut, shallot, snow peas, spinach, squash, sugar snap peas, tomatoes, turnip greens, zucchini. Final note: to avoid being annoying, this is the last time I'll mention this. Anytime you hear a list, a chart, or anything that seems like it would be even more helpful if you could see it or print it, the good news is that you can at sanesolution.com. Throughout the rest of our time together, I'm going to mention that URL much less, but please check it out, as it will greatly enhance your sane experience. New heading: a sane approach to carbohydrate. As you start going sane, some uninformed individuals might accuse you of being on a low carbohydrate diet, as if there were something wrong with being on a low carb diet to begin with. There isn't, and you aren't. The American Diabetes Association, the North American Association for the Study of Obesity, and the American Society for Clinical Nutrition made the following joint statement in their 2004 study in the journal Diabetes Care. Glycemic control was better with low carbohydrate than with low-fat dietary therapy in subjects with type 2 diabetes. Similarly, an impressive 2-year study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that Mediterranean and low-carbohydrate diets are effective alternatives to the low-fat diet for weight loss and appear to be just as safe as the low-fat diet. Not only is the saner approach to carbohydrate safe, but experts found it to be more metabolically beneficial than the typical low-fat approach. Let's cover a few key points when talking about low carb. The single most important part of living a sane lifestyle is eating no less than 10 servings of non-starchy vegetables per day. These types of vegetables are carbohydrate. Now, it may seem odd to call a lifestyle whose number one priority is eating as much of a certain type of carbohydrate as possible a low-carb diet. And it's similarly odd for people to claim that avoiding an extremely high-carb diet is a low-carb diet. What happened to medium carb? Just because you're not eating the 65% carbohydrate diet recommended by the USDA, and remember, that's as high in carbohydrate as the Atkins diet is high in fat, does not mean you're eating low carb. Low carb dieters usually keep their carb count in the ballpark of 50 grams per day. A typical Western diet contains about 300 grams of carbohydrate per day. That's an extremely high carb diet. The only way to fit 300 grams of carbohydrate into the human body is to consume concentrated and unsatisfying sources of carbohydrate, such as starches and sweets. When you go sane, you will be too full for these forms of carbohydrate, and you will unconsciously consume between 70 and 125 grams of carbohydrate per day. You will avoid obesity and diabetes-inducing extremely high-carb eating, but your carbohydrate count will not qualify you as a low-carb dieter. Note, this is not to imply that a well-formulated low-carb, high-fat diet is unhealthy. Quite the opposite has been proven true, as you will see later. It is possible and healthy to go low-carb sane, but out-of-the-box sane eating does not qualify as low-carb. Much of this carbohydrate confusion comes from the fact that 90% of what you find in the grocery store is a carbohydrate. Defining carbohydrates as food with most of their calories coming from carbohydrate, fats as foods with most of their calories coming from fat, and protein as foods with most of their calories coming from protein, you end up with the following: proteins, seafood, some meats, egg whites, low-fat and low-sugar dairy, low-sugar protein bars, low-sugar protein powders. Fats, eggs, tofu, oils, nuts, seeds, some meat, full-fat dairy. Carbohydrate, everything else. For example, the calories in whole milk come from 30% carbohydrate, 21% protein, and 49% fat. Whole milk is mostly fat, so it's classified as a fat. Calories in skim milk come from 53% carbohydrate, 42% protein, and 5% fat. Skim milk is mostly carbohydrate, so it's classified as a carbohydrate. How about the so-called good sources of protein, beans? They are 76% carbohydrate, 21% protein, and 3% fat. Beans are a carbohydrate. Broccoli is a carbohydrate with 71% of its calories coming from carbohydrate. So are bananas, 93% carbohydrate. Grains, potatoes, rice, breads, pasta, beans, fruits, vegetables, and most dairy products are all carbohydrate. Almost anything that doesn't need to be refrigerated or frozen, and all sweet drinks are carbohydrates. However, many people think of carbohydrates as limited to starches and sweets. Given this incorrect view of nutrition, we can see why these people may mistakenly call us low-carb dieters. The truth is that you and I will eat the sanest carbohydrates in mass, just as we eat the sanest proteins and the sanest fats in mass. That doesn't make us low-carb dieters. That makes us smart, healthy, and slim. New heading: the low confusion, high nutrition diet. I'm not fond of high this and low that diet labels. They generally do more harm than good. They polarize people who could be working together to help others avoid sweeteners, refined starches, and processed fats. But if we must slap a low or high diet label on our way of eating, let's call it the low confusion, high nutrition diet. I arrived at this title after considering 4 scientific facts. 1. Vitamins and minerals are essential. We must eat vitamins and minerals or we get sick. For example, if you don't eat enough vitamin B12, found only in animal products, you can develop a condition which deteriorates the spinal cord and brain. 2. Protein is essential. We've all heard of essential amino acids. Amino acids are what our body turns protein into during digestion. Some amino acids are essential because if we do not eat them, we get sick. 3. Fat is essential. We've all heard of essential fatty acids. Fatty acids are what our body turns fat into during digestion. Some fatty acids are essential because if we do not eat them, we get sick. 4. Carbohydrate is not essential. None of us have ever heard of an essential carbohydrate. That's because there is no such thing. During digestion, carbohydrate is converted into glucose. If you never ate any carbohydrate, you would not necessarily get sick because your body would create glucose from other things you eat, such as protein. I know that this last fact may seem a bit controversial, but it's not. Even the carbohydrate-loving USDA noted in its dietary reference intakes for energy, carbohydrate, fiber, fat, fatty acids, cholesterol, protein, and amino acids, the document on which all things nutritional in the government and related organizations is based. The lower limit of dietary carbohydrate compatible with life apparently is 0, provided that adequate amounts of protein and fat are consumed. I'm not sure why in this official document they stuck the word apparently in there, but oh well. The point is that there is no biological reason for a non-power athlete, aka football player, sprinter, etc., to eat carbohydrate unless it helps them to consume required vitamins, minerals, fat, or protein. So why not forget about the high carb, high fat, and high protein confusion and enjoy the foods that give us the most of what we need and the least of what we don't, and that kept us free from that which ails us long before anyone uttered the word calorie. Long-term fat loss and health are not about high carb, high fat, or high protein diets. They're about high nutrition and low confusion eating. Also, you can forget about simple carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates. This distinction just causes confusion. For example, sane fruits contain simple carbohydrates, while insane starches contain complex carbohydrates. Oh no! Not so fast. Again, the supposedly healthy complex carbohydrates, rice, cereal, crackers, potatoes, and wheat bread, all raise your blood sugar more than the simple carbohydrate table sugar. Let's avoid this complexity and enjoy more water, fiber, and protein-rich, sane plants and animals. The only form of carbohydrate in this category are non-starchy vegetables and low fructose fruits. New heading: Non-starchy vegetables. Sane carbohydrate summary. 1. Cover half your plate with non-starchy vegetables. 2. If it can't be eaten raw, don't eat it. 3. Stick with fresh or frozen. 4. Greens are great. 5. The deeper the color, the higher the sanity. 6. Raw is great, but not required. 7. A serving is about 1 to 3 handfuls, depending on how dense the non-starchy vegetables are. 8. Low-carb diets can be great, but your sane lifestyle doesn't have to be one. 9. 90% of what you see in a grocery store is carbohydrate. 10. Carbohydrate is non-essential, so focus on carbs that carry along with them the most essential nutrients possible.